When my son told me I wasn't expected for Christmas, I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him standing in that doorway, the doorway of the house I helped him buy, and said one word, understood. Then I turned around, walked back to my Silverado, and by the time I hit the highway, I'd already made the call that would change everything. But let me back up and tell you who I am. My name is George Washington. Yes, like the president. 76 years on this earth, 32 of them spent serving this country in uniform. 2 tours in Desert Storm, 1 in Bosnia, more classified missions than I can mention. I'm a black man, a veteran, a widower, and until that cold December morning, I thought I was still a father my son could count on. I'd driven 42 miles from Palmer to Anchorage that morning, not a short trip, especially with ice on the roads and my truck's heater barely working. But Marcus, my son, had called 3 days earlier asking if I could help hang Christmas lights around the garage. Just need a ladder and your steady hands, Dad, he'd said. Sounded like he wanted to spend time together. Sounded like family. I should have known better. When I pulled up to the house, the one with the address I'd memorized because I'd been paying for it, Marcus met me at the door, didn't invite me in, didn't offer coffee, just stood there, hands shoved deep in his pockets like a kid caught doing something wrong. I'm going to say this straight, Dad. He shifted his weight, couldn't look me in the eye. This year you're not expected for Christmas. Expected. Not invited. Not wanted. Expected. Like I was some delivery that got rescheduled. Like I was an appointment that could be canceled. I looked past him into the house. Lauren, his wife, moved through the kitchen. White woman, blonde hair, pulled back tight designer apron, probably cost more than my grocery bill. She glanced toward the door, saw me standing there, and looked away fast. Too fast. Something I said. I asked Marcus, keeping my voice level. The Army teaches you that. Stay calm when everything's going to hell. It's not about you, Dad. He finally met my eyes. Lauren's parents are flying in from Boston this year, Richard and Patricia. They have traditions, their own way of doing things. Traditions. I nodded slowly, taking that in. Right. Maybe we can do something the day after, he added quickly. Brunch or whatever. Brunch. I'd driven through black ice and loaded a 40-foot ladder into my truck bed for brunch. But what really got me, what really made my chest tight, was what I could see through that doorway. Past Marcus, past Lauren pretending not to watch this conversation, I could see the fireplace. And sitting right there lined up neat as soldiers were the tactical boots I'd ordered for Isaiah, my grandson, 8 years old. He'd told me last summer he wanted to be just like Grandpa, wanted to wear boots like mine. Those boots cost me $140, shipped them express so he'd have them before winter. And there they sat in the house I was paying for the grandson I wouldn't see on Christmas. I didn't say any of that. Didn't need to. Understood, I said again. Then I walked back to my truck. The engine turned over on the second try. I let it warm up for 30 seconds, watching Marcus close the door. Watching the house I'd put $30,000 down on 4 years ago, when Marcus's credit was shot from medical bills. The house I'd been paying $18.75 a month for every month like clockwork. I pulled out my phone as I reached the stop sign at the end of his street. Called the bank before I even hit the main road. The woman on the line had that professional warmth they train into bank employees. Mr. Washington, how can we help you today? I need to cancel a standing payment, I said, keeping my voice steady as the Silverado rumbled down the Palmer Highway. Certainly. May I have the account number? I rattled it off from memory. Numbers stick with you when you've been watching them leave your account every month for 4 years straight. Let me pull that up. A pause, the sound of keyboard clicks. Recurring mortgage payment to First National Bank of Alaska. $1,875 monthly. Is that correct? That's the one. And would you like this paused temporarily or canceled entirely? I looked out at the snow starting to fall. Big flakes, the kind Maria used to say, looked like God was shaking out a blanket over the world. Maria, my wife. Gone 3 years now, but I still heard her voice sometimes, especially when I was about to make a decision she'd have an opinion about. Canceled, I said, effective immediately. Another pause, longer this time. I understand, sir, that's been processed. Is there anything else we can assist you with today? No, ma'am, that's everything. I hung up and drove the rest of the way home in silence. 4 years ago, Marcus had called me on a Tuesday night. His voice had that shake in it, the one that meant he'd been crying but was trying to hide it. Dad, I got an opportunity. A VA-backed loan. We could actually buy a house, But my credit is still shot from the hospital bills. The hospital bills. That's where this whole thing started, really. Marcus had been in a car accident 2 years before that. Not his fault. Some kid texting and driving ran a red light T-boned Marcus's sedan on the passenger side. Broke 3 ribs, collapsed a lung, spent 5 days in ICU. The other driver's insurance covered some of it, but not enough. Never enough. Medical debt in this country will bury you alive, especially when you're young and just starting out. Marcus's credit score had dropped from 720 to 540 in 6 months. Every application he put in for a mortgage came back denied. He and Lauren were stuck in a cramped 2-bedroom duplex paying $1,300 a month in rent to a landlord who wouldn't fix the heating. I'd been over there in winter. You could see your breath in the kitchen. Can you help? Marcus had asked that night. Can you co-sign? I didn't hesitate. Didn't think twice. Of course, I'd said. That's what fathers do. Maria had been gone 6 months by then. Cancer took her faster than the doctor said it would. One day she was complaining about being tired. 4 months later, I was picking out a casket. The house felt too big without her, too quiet. Marcus was all I had left of the family we'd built together. So I co-signed. Put down $30,000 from the pension fund Maria and I had been saving. Got them a 3.5% interest rate. Watched Marcus and Lauren sign the papers. Watched them get the keys. Watched Lauren cry happy tears and hug her parents over FaceTime, Richard and Patricia Mitchell. I'd met them once briefly at the wedding. They'd flown in from Boston, stayed at the nicest hotel in Anchorage, and made it very clear they thought their daughter was marrying beneath her station. I was polite, shook Richard's hand, listened to Patricia talk about their home in Beacon Hill, their membership at the country club, their plans to winter in Florida. Lauren had seemed different back then, younger, less polished. She'd looked at Marcus like he hung the moon. I'd thought maybe love would be enough. Maria hadn't been so sure. We'd been lying in bed one night about a month before the wedding. She'd been sick by then, though we didn't know how sick yet. She'd turned to me in the dark and said, "George, I need to tell you something about that girl." Lauren. She sees your color before she sees your character. I'd tried to argue, told Maria she was being unfair, that Lauren was young, that she'd grow, that Marcus loved her, and that was what mattered. Maria had just squeezed my hand. "I hope you're right, baby. I really do. But I've been a black woman in this world for 58 years. I know how some white folks look at us when they think we're not paying attention." I'd dismissed it then. Thought Maria was just being protective. Thought maybe the cancer was making her see threats where there weren't any. But Maria had been right about most things in our 37 years together. Turned out this was one of them. I pulled into my driveway around 11:30. The house looked smaller every time I came back to it. A modest 2-bedroom at the edge of Wasilla, paint peeling on the north side where the wind hits hardest. The roof needed patching, had needed it for 2 years. But every time I had money saved up to fix it, something came up. Marcus needed help with the furnace. Isaiah needed new school supplies. Lauren's car needed new tires. Always something. I sat in the truck for a minute after killing the engine hands still on the wheel. The leather was cracked under my palms. This Silverado had 240,000 miles on it. I'd bought it used in 2006. Paid cash. Never missed a payment on anything in my life, even when money was tight. Even when Maria was sick and the medical bills were piling up on our kitchen table like snowdrifts. That's what you do. You pay your debts. You keep your word. You take care of your family. I'd thought that's what I was doing all these years. Inside the house was cold. I'd turned the heat down before I left that morning, trying to save on the propane bill. I hung my coat on the hook by the door, the same hook that had been there since Maria and I moved in back in 1994. 30 years in this house. Raised Marcus here. Buried Maria from here. The kitchen table was where I kept my files, not in some fancy home office. Just a plastic accordion folder, the kind you can buy at any office supply store for $3. Inside was everything. Bank statements going back 4 years. Printed emails. Receipts for every repair I'd paid for on Marcus's house. The roof work after that hailstorm in 2021. The new water heater in 2022. The kitchen appliances when theirs broke down 3 months after they moved in. I spread it all out on the table. Started adding it up on a yellow legal pad the way I'd been taught in the Army. Write it down. Make it real. Numbers don't lie. Mortgage payments $1,875 times 48 months. That's $90,000 right there. Down payment $30,000. Roof repair $4,800. Water heater $2,200. Kitchen appliances $3,100. The time I paid their heating bill when the furnace broke in January, and they didn't have the cash, $600, the Christmas tree I brought them the first year after Maria died because they couldn't afford 150. I kept writing, kept adding. The numbers climbed higher than I'd realized, higher than I'd let myself realize maybe. When I finally reached the bottom of the page, the total sat there staring back at me. $137,425. I set the pen down, looked at that number for a long time. Then I looked at my own bank statement, the one for my personal account, the checking account that held my pension and my Social Security. After the automatic mortgage payment went through each month after I paid my own bills, I usually had about $200 left over, sometimes less. $200 a month for a man who'd served his country for 32 years. I picked up the calculator, did the math one more time to be sure. Without that mortgage payment, I'd have just over $2,000 a month left after my own expenses. For the first time in 4 years, my budget would actually balance. I could fix my roof, buy new tires, maybe even get the truck's heater repaired before winter really set in. For the first time in 4 years, I could breathe. I didn't eat dinner that night, wasn't hungry. Instead, I made a pot of coffee and sat at that kitchen table with the papers still spread out in front of me. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling. My phone sat face up next to the legal pad, waiting. It buzzed at 9:43. A text message. From Lauren. George Marcus said you canceled the transfer. I'm assuming this is temporary. Can we talk? I read it 3 times, looking for something that wasn't there. No greeting. No dad, even though she'd called me that for 7 years. No apology. No acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe they'd done something wrong. Just an assumption that this was temporary, that I'd come crawling back, that the money would flow again once we had our little talk, and I understood how things really were. I picked up the phone, typed out 2 words, let's, hit send. Then I set the phone back down and waited. The thing about the Army is it teaches you patience, teaches you that sometimes the best move is no move at all. You set your position, you wait, you let the enemy show their hand first. I'd learned that in my first tour, watching a desert road for 16 hours straight, waiting for movement that might not come. This felt like that. Watching, waiting, letting them make the next move. I didn't have to wait long. The phone rang 2 minutes later. Not Lauren, Marcus. I let it ring once, twice, picked up on the 3rd ring. Dad. His voice was tight, strained. Aaron told me what you did. Aaron. He called her Aaron at home, I knew that. Professional name, she'd said once, easier for business, but he'd always called her Lauren around me. Around family. The fact that he'd slipped now told me something, told me this call was coming from their united front, told me she was probably right there listening. I didn't say anything, just waited. Another thing the Army teaches you, silence is a weapon. People will fill it, usually with the truth they didn't mean to tell. You canceled the house payments, Marcus said. Still, I waited. I just thought he started then stopped. Exhaled hard. I thought maybe this was a mistake, or a warning. No, Marcus, I said finally. It was a correction. A what? A correction. I've been paying your mortgage, your furnace, repairs, your kids' private school uniform fees for 4 years. You told me I wasn't expected for Christmas. That's fine. But from now on, I'm also not expected to subsidize your life. The silence on his end was thick. I could hear it, the weight of it. Could almost see him sitting there, probably at that kitchen island I'd helped pay for, trying to figure out how to spin this. Dad, you know we're in a tight spot. You've been in a tight spot for a decade, I said. That's not my problem anymore. That's not fair. No, Marcus. What's not fair is taking money from a man you no longer want at your table. More silence. Then I heard it. A voice in the background. Female. Lauren. Couldn't make out the words, but I knew that tone. That was the tone of someone coaching their spouse, telling them what to say, how to handle this. Marcus cleared his throat. I didn't want this to become a fight. It's not a fight, I replied. A fight would require us to be on the same battlefield. Right now, you're in a house I paid for. I'm sitting in a cold kitchen, eating off cracked plates, wondering when my son forgot where he came from. I heard him breathe. One of those sharp inhales people do when they're hurt but don't want to admit it. Look, Dad, Lauren's parents, they just have higher expectations for how things should be. They're refined people. They come from a certain background. They have standards. Refined. That word hung in the air between us like smoke. I knew exactly what it meant. Had heard versions of it my whole life. From drill sergeants who didn't think black soldiers were smart enough for officer training. From loan officers who looked at my application differently than they looked at my white colleagues. From teachers who told Maria that Marcus was bright, but maybe he should focus on vocational training instead of college. Refined meant white, meant money, meant everything. I wasn't in their eyes, no matter how many medals I'd earned or how many years I'd served or how much of my own money I'd poured into keeping their daughter's life comfortable. Refined, I repeated, letting the word sit there. Marcus knew he'd messed up. I could hear it in how quickly he tried to backtrack. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did, and that's fine. You made your choice. You chose refined over real. You chose their traditions over your own family. That's your right. But don't expect me to keep paying for the privilege of being excluded. Dad, come on. I'm done, Marcus. What does that mean? It means exactly what I said. I'm done. Done apologizing for not being refined enough. Done making myself smaller so your in-laws feel bigger. Done paying for a life you're building with people who don't respect where you came from. This is about Lauren, isn't it? No, I said, and I meant it. This is about you, about the man you chose to become. Lauren might have her prejudices, but you're the one who decided I wasn't worth defending. You're the one who told me I wasn't expected. Not her. You. I could hear him breathing hard now. Could picture him there, hand pressed to his forehead the way he used to do when he was a kid and got caught in a lie. Isaiah asks about you, he said quietly. Like that was supposed to change something. Then you explained to Isaiah why his grandfather isn't there anymore, I said. You explained to him what refined means, what traditions are worth more than family. I didn't wait for a response, didn't say goodbye, just ended the call and set the phone face down on the table. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd expected them to shake, expected to feel something big, something overwhelming. But all I felt was clarity, cold, clear, and sharp as the Alaska air outside my window. That night I walked out to the garage. Hadn't been out there in months. It was cold, unheated, full of boxes I'd been meaning to sort through since Maria passed. Tools hanging on pegboard. Her gardening supplies still in the corner covered in dust. In the back under a tarp was my old footlocker from the service. Standard military issue. Olive drab. Scratched and dented from being hauled through 3 continents and more deployments than I cared to remember. I pulled off the tarp, popped the latches. Inside was my past. Dress uniform carefully folded. Dog tags on a chain. A stack of commendations in a manila envelope. My field notebook from Desert Storm pages yellowed and brittle. A photo of my unit, all of us young and stupid and thinking we were invincible. I'd been a soldier for 32 years. Infantry, then sergeant, then master sergeant. I knew how to plan, how to prepare, how to execute a mission. This was a mission now. I carried the footlocker back inside, cleared off the kitchen table completely, started pulling out fresh folders from the drawer where Maria used to keep her coupon organizer. First folder I labeled Financial Evidence. Inside went copies of every bank statement showing the mortgage transfers, every receipt for repairs I'd paid for, every check I'd written, every confirmation email. I had 4 years of documentation, built it into a timeline, month by month, payment by payment. The total kept climbing, $94,000 not counting the down payment. Second folder, social media. I wasn't on Facebook much, but Lauren was. Posted constantly. I started taking screenshots. Her at the house caption about being blessed. Her new kitchen talking about how hard work pays off. Her at the country club with her parents, something about family traditions and grateful hearts. Every post painted a picture of a life she'd built herself. Not a word about help. Not a mention of anyone else's sacrifice. The most recent one was from 2 days ago. A photo of their Christmas tree, expensive ornaments, professionally coordinated, caption read, "Everything we have we earned together, so blessed." I screenshotted that one twice, printed it out, highlighted the word earned. Third folder. I started a voice recording on my phone, began documenting memories, not just the financial stuff. The other things, the ways I'd been slowly erased. How Lauren stopped inviting me to Isaiah's school events. How family photos on their mantle went from including me to not including me. How my birthday last year passed without a call. How they'd celebrated Marcus's promotion without telling me until a week later. I recorded for 20 minutes. Then I saved it, backed it up, printed out a transcript. If they wanted to erase me from their story, they'd have to fight harder than this. I was just getting started. Sunday afternoon, my phone rang again. Not Marcus this time. Lauren. I almost didn't answer. Let it ring 4 times before I picked up. George. Her voice had that practiced sweetness to it, like honey poured over broken glass. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Is that so? I think emotions got heightened and maybe you overreacted a little. We can talk this through like adults. Overreacted. There it was. The word people use when they want you to believe your justified anger is really just you being unreasonable. What part of this is confusing for you, Lauren? She paused. I could hear her recalibrating. Well, you're punishing Marcus and Isaiah. You're punishing yourself too. This doesn't have to change everything. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm correcting an imbalance. But the kids love you. Isaiah asks about you constantly. Then maybe you should have thought about that before telling me I wasn't expected. Her voice changed then. Got sharper, colder. You're acting unstable, George. And there it was. The card I knew she'd play eventually. Unstable. The word white people love to use when black folks stop accepting whatever scraps they're given. When we stop smiling and nodding and being grateful for the bare minimum. I'd seen it my whole career. The black soldier who speaks up about unfair treatment gets labeled aggressive. The one who demands what he's earned gets called difficult. The one who refuses to back down gets called unstable. Maria had warned me about this too. Told me there'd come a day when Lauren would try to paint me as the problem, would use my age, my race, my perfectly reasonable anger as proof that something was wrong with me instead of with them. Let me be very clear, I said, keeping my voice so level it could have balanced a rifle. I'm done funding people who treat me like a burden. That's not instability. That's self-respect. This isn't what family does. No, I agreed. Family doesn't exclude people from Christmas. Family doesn't take $137,000 and act like it was owed to them. Family doesn't look at the man who sacrificed for them and decide he's not refined enough to sit at their table. Silence on her end. Long enough that I thought maybe she'd hung up. Then she tried one more angle. We'll figure out the mortgage ourselves. But I hope you know you're burning bridges you can't rebuild. Lauren, I said. Those bridges were already burned. I'm just finally acknowledging the ashes. You'll regret this. Maybe. But I doubt it. One more thing I added before she could respond. Tell your parents I won't be picking them up from the airport this year, or any year. They can get their own ride. I ended the call before she could answer. For the first time in 5 years, I opened the good bottle of scotch, the one Maria and I had been saving for a special occasion. We'd bought it the year before she got sick. Planned to open it on our 40th anniversary. Never got the chance. I poured 2 fingers into a glass. Walked over to the mantel where her photo sat. Us at our 30th anniversary party. Her in that blue dress she loved. Me in my dress uniform. Both of us smiling like we'd won the lottery. I raised the glass to her picture. I'm back on mission, I whispered. Then I took a drink. The scotch burned going down, warm and sharp and real, just like the truth. By Tuesday morning, my phone had exploded. 28 missed calls, most from numbers I didn't recognize, a few from Marcus, 3 from Lauren, 1 from a number with a Boston area code that I knew had to be her parents. I ignored all of them except 1. The voicemail came from a number I'd never seen before. Local area code, professional voice, female. Mr. Washington, my name is Dana Roberts. I'm a journalist with the Anchorage Sentinel. I was hoping to speak with you regarding a story we're preparing on elder isolation and abandonment during the holidays. Your name was mentioned by a concerned party. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. Elder isolation. Abandonment. I played the message 3 times. Someone had gone to the press. And I had a pretty good idea who. Patricia Mitchell, Lauren's mother. The woman who'd looked at me exactly twice during Marcus and Lauren's wedding. Once when we were introduced. Once when I gave the father of the groom speech. Both times with the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. She was playing chess now, trying to control the narrative. Paint me as some confused old man, some abandoned veteran who didn't understand that times had changed and families were different now. Cognitive decline. That's what she'd probably told them. Maybe added some bits about me being erratic, unpredictable, making rash financial decisions. It was a smart move. I'd give her that. Get ahead of the story. Make me the problem before I could make them the problem. But Patricia Mitchell didn't know who she was dealing with. I'd spent 3 decades in military intelligence. Knew how information warfare worked. Knew that whoever controls the narrative controls the outcome. And right now, she thought she controlled it. She was wrong. I looked at the phone number Dana Roberts had left. Didn't hesitate. Called her back right then. 9:15 in the morning, my coffee was still hot, my mind was clear, and I had 3 folders full of documentation sitting on my kitchen table. She answered on the second ring. "Ms. Roberts," I said. "This is George Washington. You left me a message about elder isolation." A pause. Then, "Yes, Mr. Washington. Thank you for calling back so quickly. I have some time this afternoon," I said, "and I have some documents I think you'll want to see." We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes and young people typing on laptops like they were writing the next great American novel. I got there 15 minutes early, ordered black coffee, sat at a corner table where I could see the door. Old habits. I dressed carefully that morning, clean flannel shirt pressed, good jeans no holes, shaved close, trimmed what was left of my hair. I needed to look exactly like what I was. Sane, clear-eyed. Dangerous if pushed but in control. Dana Roberts walked in at 2 o'clock exactly. Mid-30s maybe, professional, carried herself like someone who took her work seriously. She spotted me right away probably because I was the only black man over 70 in the place. "Mr. Washington George," I said, standing to shake her hand. She sat down across from me, pulled out a notebook and a digital recorder. "Mind if I record this?" "Go ahead." She pressed record, stated the date and time, then looked at me with the kind of directness I appreciated. "I want to be up front with you, George. I received a call from Patricia Mitchell 3 days ago. She's concerned about you, said you may be experiencing cognitive decline, that perhaps recent decisions regarding family support and financial arrangements were made under duress or emotional stress." I nodded slowly. "And what did she tell you exactly?" Dana flipped through her notes. "That you'd been helping your son and daughter-in-law financially for several years. That recently you'd abruptly cut off support. That you'd made statements suggesting paranoia or confusion. She shared copies of bank records showing canceled transfers. She also provided character references from several people in their social circle." "Their social circle," I repeated. "Yes. Did she mention why I cut off that support?" Dana paused. "She said there had been a disagreement about holiday plans, that you'd overreacted to a scheduling conflict." I reached into the bag I'd brought with me, set it on the table. Inside were my 3 folders. "Ms. Roberts," I said, "I'm 76 years old. I served this country for 32 years. I have no criminal record, no history of mental illness, and until 3 days ago, I had a perfect credit score. I'm going to show you some documents now. And then you can decide whether I'm confused or whether Mrs. Mitchell is trying to control a story that doesn't belong to her." I opened the first folder, slid it across the table. She read in silence. I watched her eyes move across the bank statements, watched her eyebrows rise slightly when she saw the totals, watched her flip through receipt after receipt, the timeline I'd built, the proof. After about 10 minutes, she looked up. "You co-signed their mortgage?" "Yes. And you've been making the payments for 4 years, every month, $1,875, plus repairs, plus emergencies, plus whatever else they needed." She went back to reading, pulled out her phone, started taking pictures of the documents. Finally, she set down the folder. "Would you be willing to provide copies of all this documentation?" I smiled. Small, tight. "Ms. Roberts, I already have copies prepared for you. Everything you're looking at, plus social media posts, plus a written timeline of how I've been systematically excluded from their family while continuing to fund their lifestyle." She sat back in her chair, studied me for a long moment. "This isn't what Patricia Mitchell told me at all." "No," I said. "I imagine it's not." The article went live Thursday morning. I saw it first on my phone. Dana had texted me the link at 6 a.m., told me it would be on the front page of the website, page 4 in print. The headline read, "The Forgotten Contributor, One Veteran's Quiet Christmas." She'd written it straight. No melodrama, just facts. A 76-year-old veteran who'd served his country for 3 decades. A son he'd helped financially for years. A mortgage he'd co-signed and paid. A Christmas invitation that never came. A family who'd taken his money but not his presence. She didn't name Marcus or Lauren directly. Didn't have to. Anyone in Anchorage who knew them would connect the dots immediately. She'd included a photo of me at my kitchen table, coffee mug in hand. I'd asked her not to use the one with Maria's picture in the frame. She'd honored that. The article was careful, respectful, but it didn't pull punches. One detail stood out in particular. Dana had done her homework. She'd found Lauren's social media posts, included screenshots. The one about everything we have we earned together, the one about their blessed life, the one about family traditions. And then she'd laid out the numbers. Not all of them, but enough. The down payment. 4 years of mortgage payments. The pattern of exclusion. By lunchtime, the comment section had exploded. God bless this veteran. My father went through the same thing. Some children forget where they came from. This breaks my heart. After everything he sacrificed, I know this family. I've seen them at the country club. Always thought something was off about how they acted. Then, someone connected the dots publicly. Lauren Mitchell still posting about her humble holiday while living in a house funded by her black father-in-law. The audacity. Yikes. That comment got 247 likes. Another one below it. This is what happens when white families marry black men, but don't actually respect them. They take the benefits and hide the person. Classic. Another microaggressions aren't so micro when you add them up over 4 years and $130,000. The story started getting shared. Local news picked it up. Someone made a TikTok about it. By 3 p.m. it had 50,000 views. My phone started ringing at 4:12. Marcus, I sent it to voicemail. 4:15. Lauren called. Voicemail. 4:23, a number with a Boston area code. I almost ignored it, then decided I wanted to hear this. I answered. The voice on the other end was male, clipped, angry. The kind of anger that came from people used to being in control. Mr. Washington, this is Richard Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, you need to retract that article. I didn't write it. You gave her the information. You made this public. I gave her the truth. There's a difference. His voice got colder. You're embarrassing my family. Then maybe your family should try less embarrassing behavior. I could hear him breathing hard, trying to control his temper. Probably not used to being talked back to, certainly not by someone like me. This will have consequences, he said. I almost laughed. Mr. Mitchell, I'm 76 years old. I watched men die in the desert. I've buried a wife. I've been called every name you can imagine and a few you probably can't. You think I'm afraid of consequences from a banker in Boston? You're playing a dangerous game, old man. No, Richard, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm just finally keeping score. And the scoreboard just went public. You all spent years trying to erase me quietly. Now everyone gets to see what that erasure cost. He sputtered. Started to say something else. I hung up. Then I turned off my phone completely. Poured myself another cup of coffee. Sat at my kitchen table with the article pulled up on my laptop. Read through the comments again. Slow. Taking in each one. For the first time in 4 years, strangers were seeing me. Really seeing me. Not as the problem, not as the confusion, not as the inconvenience. As the man who'd been wronged. That conversation with Richard Mitchell wasn't the end of it. He called back twice more that evening. I didn't answer. Let him leave voicemails. Listened to them later with my coffee. The first one was more of the same. Threats disguised as concern. You're making a mistake. This won't end well for you. Think about your grandson. The second one was different. Quieter. More calculated. Mr. Washington, I've spoken with my attorney. We believe there may be grounds to challenge the cancellation of those mortgage payments. You entered into an implied contract when you began making those payments. Stopping abruptly could be considered a breach. We're prepared to pursue this legally if necessary. I saved that one. Played it 3 times, taking notes. Richard Mitchell thought he could intimidate me with lawyers. Thought I was some confused old man who'd fold under pressure. He didn't know I'd already been to see my own attorney. Susan Baxter had been handling my legal affairs since Maria got sick. Tough woman. Sharp. Didn't waste time on small talk. I'd called her the same day I met with Dana Roberts. The meeting had been short. Straightforward. I showed her everything. The mortgage documents, the bank records, the emails. She'd read through it all, made notes, then looked up at me. "You're not obligated to continue these payments," she'd said. "You co-signed yes. But you're not the primary borrower. They are. And there's nothing in writing that says you committed to paying their mortgage indefinitely. What if they try to say it was an implied agreement?" She'd smiled at that. A thin smile. The kind lawyers get when they know they're holding better cards than the other side. Let them try. You have documentation showing you did this voluntarily as a gift. Gifts can be stopped at any time. And the fact that they excluded you from family events while taking your money. That's what we call unjust enrichment. If anyone has grounds for a lawsuit, it's you. I'd paid her retainer that day, had her draft a letter, a formal notification that all financial support was voluntary, non-contractual, and permanently discontinued. She'd sent it certified mail to Marcus and Lauren 2 days before the article dropped. So when Richard Mitchell called talking about implied contracts and legal action, I knew exactly where I stood. I called him back Friday morning, 8 a.m., early enough that he'd probably still be having his first coffee, thinking he had the upper hand. "Mr. Mitchell, this is George Washington." A pause. "Then I'm glad you called back. I'm going to save us both some time and money," I said. "I've already spoken with my attorney. The payments I made were voluntary gifts. There was no contract implied or otherwise. And if you'd like to pursue legal action, my attorney has prepared a countersuit for unjust enrichment and elder financial abuse." That stopped him. Elder financial abuse, taking money from an elderly person while systematically excluding them from family events, while isolating them, while trying to paint them as mentally incompetent to cover your tracks. Yes, Mr. Mitchell, that has a name, and it has consequences. The line was quiet for a long time. "You've thought this through," he said finally. "I've had 4 years to think it through. I just finally decided to do something about it. This isn't over." "No," I agreed. "It's not. Next week the Sentinel is running a follow-up, with names this time. Dana Roberts is a very thorough journalist. She's been digging into your family's finances, too. Found some interesting things about how you've been claiming certain charitable deductions." I hung up before he could respond. Saturday afternoon I drove past their house. Didn't plan to. Was just heading to the hardware store and the route took me by their neighborhood. The for sale sign was already up. Big, professional. One of those fancy real estate companies that puts your house on billboards. The yard that was usually decorated by now lights and inflatables and wreaths was bare, empty. The windows were dark even though it was only 4 in the afternoon. I slowed down but didn't stop. Just took it in. The house I'd helped them buy. The house I'd paid for. Now up for sale because they couldn't afford it without me. I felt something then. Not satisfaction exactly. Not victory, something colder. Something like watching a building you'd shored up finally collapse after you'd pulled the supports. That night, 10:34, an email came through. From Marcus. Subject line, "I'm sorry. I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. But something made me open it. Dad, I don't know how we got here. I don't know when I stopped seeing you and started seeing what Lauren's parents wanted me to see. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I can. But I miss you. So does Isaiah. He asks about you every day." Attached was a photo. Me holding Isaiah when he was 3 years old. He was wearing my old army cap way too big for his little head tilted sideways. Both of us grinning at the camera. Maria had taken that photo. Thanksgiving 5 years ago. Back when things were good. Back when I was still welcome. Below the photo in Isaiah's handwriting. Wobbly letters written in blue crayon. "I love you, Grandpa. Merry Christmas." I stared at that photo for a long time. At Isaiah's face. At my own face, younger then, happier, I cried. Just 2 tears, quiet. The way old men cry when no one's watching. 1 tear for the boy I'd raised. The one who'd called me dad and meant it. The one who used to ask my advice about everything. 1 tear for the man he'd become. The one who'd chosen comfort over character. Who'd let someone else's prejudices become his own. I saved the email. Didn't reply. Not yet. Sunday morning I printed out that photo. The one of me and Isaiah. Took it to the frame shop downtown. Had them put it in a simple black frame. Nothing fancy. Just clean, respectful. When I got home, I cleared a space on the mantel. right next to Maria's photo. The two pictures sat there side by side, my past and what might be my future. The woman I'd loved for 37 years. The boy who might still remember who I was. My phone sat on the kitchen table. Marcus's email still open on the screen, waiting for a response. I didn't give him one. Not because I was cruel, not because I didn't care, but because Marcus needed to sit in the silence he'd built, needed to feel what it was like to reach out and get nothing back, to send love into a void and wonder if it would ever be returned. I'd spent 4 years doing that, 4 years of showing up emotionally, financially, physically, and being met with less and less acknowledgement. 4 years of my love being received and then dismissed. 4 years of silence on birthdays, on holidays, on the anniversaries of Maria's death, when I needed family most. Now it was his turn to understand what that felt like. I made a list instead. Practical things. Things that needed doing now that my financial situation had shifted. Call the roofer. Get an estimate on those shingles. Schedule the truck for new tires before winter really hit. Order the parts for the heater. Maybe fix it myself like I used to. Look into that community center volunteer program Maria had always wanted me to join. These were things I'd been putting off for years. Always telling myself I'd do them when I had extra money, when things weren't so tight, when Marcus didn't need help. Well, Marcus didn't get my help anymore, and I had money now, not a lot, but enough. Enough to fix my own life instead of constantly repairing someone else's. I looked at those two photos on the mantle again, Maria and Isaiah, the people who'd loved me without conditions, without requiring me to be smaller or quieter or more refined. Maria would have told me I was doing the right thing, would have put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Baby, you gave that boy every chance. Now he has to decide what kind of man he wants to be." Isaiah. I wasn't sure about yet. He was 8. Still young enough that maybe this wouldn't damage him permanently. Still young enough that he might remember his grandpa as someone who stood up for himself instead of someone who let himself be erased. I picked up my phone, looked at Marcus's email one more time, then I closed it. Turned off the screen, let him sit in the silence he built, let him wonder what I was thinking, what I was feeling, whether I'd ever speak to him again, let him feel for once what uncertainty tastes like. December 24th, 6:41 in the evening, I sat in my truck across the street from their house. Engine off, lights dimmed, breath fogging the windshield in the cold. They'd gone all out this year, every window glowing warm and golden, white lights traced along the gutters perfectly spaced, professionally installed. Wreaths on both front windows tied with red velvet bows, 2 of those inflatable reindeer flanking the walkway lit from inside, nodding their mechanical heads, the kind of Christmas display that cost money, the kind that said, "Look at us, we've made it." Through the front window I could see movement, shapes passing back and forth, heard laughter spilling out muffled by glass and distance but unmistakable. A party. 12 guests, if the cars parked along the street were any indication. Mercedes, BMW, a Lexus. That Tesla probably belonged to Richard and Patricia. A dinner party on Christmas Eve, the refined tradition Lauren's parents had flown in for, the one I wasn't expected to attend. On the passenger seat beside me sat my briefcase, old leather, worn at the corners. I'd carried it to 1,000 meetings during my years in military administration. It had been to Germany, to Kuwait, to more forward operating bases than I could remember. Tonight it carried 12 identical packets. I'd spent the last 3 days preparing them, each one in a manila folder, each one containing the same documentation. Bank statements showing every mortgage payment, every one, 48 months in a row, $1,875, every single one with my name on the withdrawal, receipts for renovations. The roof repair after the hailstorm. George Washington paid in full. The water heater replacement, George Washington paid in full. The new kitchen appliances when theirs died, George Washington paid in full. A copy of the article from the Sentinel, printed, with my highlighter marks in yellow. The part about voluntary gifts, the part about systematic exclusion. The part about families who take without acknowledging. Screenshots from Lauren's Facebook, printed in color, her standing in that kitchen I'd paid to renovate. Caption, "Everything we have, we earned together." The word earned highlighted in red. Another post from 2 weeks ago. Her at the country club with her parents. Caption, "Blessed to share our family traditions with the people who matter most." The people who matter most, I'd highlighted that too. 12 packets, 1 for each guest. So everyone at that table would know exactly who'd paid for the plates they were eating off of, the chairs they were sitting in, the roof over their heads, I checked my watch. 6:47. They'd be sitting down to dinner soon. First course probably already served. Wine poured, everyone comfortable and settled. Perfect timing. I picked up the briefcase, felt its weight, felt the weight of 4 years of silence, and swallowed pride and money given freely that had bought me nothing but exclusion. Stepped out of the truck. The cold hit immediately. Sharp, clean. The kind of cold that wakes you up, makes everything clear. I adjusted my pea coat, navy blue wool, the same one I'd worn to Maria's funeral, the same one I'd worn to Marcus's college graduation. Still fit, still looked sharp, walked across the street, up their driveway, past the glowing reindeer and the perfect wreaths. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. This was a safe neighborhood, the kind of neighborhood where people didn't expect uninvited guests. I let myself in. The warmth hit first. Heat and cinnamon and brown sugar, red wine, roasted meat, the smell of money and comfort and a Christmas that had no room for me. Then the silence. The exact moment a room full of people realizes something has shifted. When conversation stops mid-sentence. When forks pause halfway to mouths. When 12 faces turn toward the door as one. I stood there in the entryway, briefcase in hand, snow melting off my boots onto their hardwood floor. 12 guests, all dressed nice, holiday sweaters and dress shirts and pearls, sitting around that dining table I'd never been invited to. Crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier, china plates with gold trim, centerpiece made of pine boughs and white roses. Lauren saw me first. Her face went from relaxed to white in about half a second. "George!" Her voice came out strangled. "What are you doing here?" Marcus half stood from his chair, hands on the table like he needed the support. "Dad." I held up one hand. "Not aggressive, just calm. The way you signal you come in peace." "I won't stay long," I said. My voice carried in the quiet room. But since I wasn't expected for dinner, I figured I'd at least drop off a few gifts. I moved into the room, slow, deliberate, around the table, counterclockwise, set the first packet in front of the man closest to me, mid-50s, expensive watch. He looked at it like I'd just placed a live snake on his plate. The second packet went to a woman with silver hair and too much jewelry. She picked it up gingerly, confused. Third packet, fourth, fifth. I worked my way around that table, placing a manila folder in front of each guest. Some of them opened them immediately, some just stared. Patricia Mitchell sat at the far end, Lauren's mother, dressed in cream cashmere, diamond earrings catching the light. She was the sixth person. When I set the packet in front of her, she didn't wait, opened it right away. I watched her eyes scan the first page, the bank statement, watched her face change, watched understanding hit. She looked up at me, then at Lauren, then back at the papers. "George." Lauren was standing now, voice shaking. "You came here to humiliate us." "No," I said quietly. "I came here to correct the record." A man near the middle of the table had his folder open, reading. His eyebrows went up. "These documents say you paid the mortgage for this house." He looked at Marcus. "Every month for 4 years." I nodded. "That's correct. Plus the down payment someone else read aloud from their copy. $30,000, plus repairs I added, plus appliances, plus whatever emergency came up. It's all documented there, with dates, with receipts." The room had gone from silent to buzzing, quiet conversations starting, people flipping through pages, reading, exchanging glances. Patricia set her folder down, stood up, smoothed her cashmere like that would somehow smooth over what was happening. "This is wildly inappropriate," she said. Her voice had that Upper East Coast clip to it, that prep school certainty. "You're disrupting a family gathering." I turned to face her directly. "That's interesting," I said, considering I was told I wasn't family anymore. That landed. I could see it land, could see the people around the table register what that meant. A younger woman near Marcus, blonde, early 30s, spoke up. "Wait." She looked at the documents in front of her. Then at Marcus. "You never mentioned your father paid for all this." Marcus's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Lauren moved toward me, arms crossed, defensive. "We didn't ask you for all that. You offered. You wanted to help." "Correct," I said. "I offered because I believed family took care of each other. I paid month after month because I trusted that one day I'd be allowed a seat at this table again." I paused. Let that sink in. My voice never rose. But the weight of it, the control shifted something in the room. I was wrong. Someone near the window whispered, "Jesus Christ," under their breath. Marcus looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Face down, shoulders caved in, the posture of a man who knew he'd been caught. I turned to him, made sure everyone could hear. "I'm not angry at you," I said. "I'm disappointed. You had a father who would have given you everything, who did give you everything, and you traded that for candlelight and white linen with people who never lifted a finger for you." Lauren's face was red now, tears starting. "You're ruining our reputation." "No," I said, voice still calm, still level. "You ruined it when you lied to every person at this table, when you let them believe this house, this lifestyle, this performance was yours, when you posted on social media about earning everything together while I paid your bills." I pulled out my phone, opened it to one of Lauren's Facebook posts, the one about earning things together, held it up so people could see. "Posted 2 weeks ago," I said. "Same week I made your mortgage payment. Same week you told me I wasn't expected for Christmas." A man at the far end closed his folder, looked directly at me. "Thank you for your service, sir." Just those words. But they carried weight, acknowledgement, respect. I nodded at him. Patricia tried one more time. "George, if you don't leave right now, I'll be forced to involve the police." I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd tried to paint me as confused, unstable. This woman who'd called reporters to control the narrative before I could tell my truth. "The police," I asked, "or the press?" "Because the Anchorage Sentinel is running a follow-up next week." Patricia, with names this time, Dana Roberts has been very thorough, very interested in how your family operates. Her mouth clamped shut. I picked up my empty briefcase, looked around the table one last time, at the faces, some shocked, some sympathetic, some angry on my behalf. "I won't be seeing you again," I said, directed at Marcus and Lauren, but loud enough for everyone. "But I hope one day you'll see yourselves." I turned toward the door. Behind me, Lauren burst into tears. Loud, dramatic, the kind of crying that demanded attention. And below that sound, quieter, a man's voice from somewhere near the window. "They're going to lose everything." I walked out, closed the door behind me. Soft, no slam, no drama. Just done. I walked back to my truck. Snow was falling harder now, big flakes that stuck to my coat, my hair, the kind of snow that covers everything clean and white. Behind me, through the windows of that house, I could see shadows moving, animated, probably everyone talking at once, probably Marcus and Lauren trying to explain, probably Patricia attempting damage control. I didn't care anymore. I sat in the truck for a minute, engine running, heater blowing cold air that would eventually turn warm, hands on the steering wheel. That moment in there when I'd said I was wrong. When I'd admitted in front of 12 strangers that I'd been wrong to trust my own son, that had cost something, had required something. But it was true. I had been wrong to think that blood alone meant loyalty, wrong to think that giving would eventually lead to being valued, wrong to confuse my son's acceptance of my money with my son's acceptance of me. 4 years I'd been wrong, 4 years of paying and hoping and waiting for things to get better. They hadn't gotten better. They'd gotten more expensive. My phone buzzed. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Washington, this is Jennifer Rothman. I was at dinner tonight. I'm the one sitting near the window. I just wanted to say what you did took courage. My father is a veteran too. Korean War. I know what sacrifice looks like. What you shared tonight mattered. I read it twice. Didn't respond, but I saved it." Another text came through. Different number. "This is David Chen. I sit on the board at the country club with Richard Mitchell. After what I saw tonight, I'll be recommending we review his membership. What your family did to you is unconscionable. You deserved better." Then another. "George. This is Rachel Winters. Lauren and I were in college together. I've watched her social media for years, feeling like something was off. Tonight explained everything. I'm so sorry this happened to you." They kept coming. 4 more texts from people who'd been at that table. People I'd never met before tonight. People who'd seen the truth laid out in manila folders and had chosen to believe it. Chosen to believe me. The last text was different. From Marcus. "Dad, I don't know what to say." Everyone left. Lauren is upstairs packing. Her parents already went back to their hotel. We're going to lose the house. I know that now. I know it's my fault. I just need you to know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stared at that message for a long time, read it over and over. Part of me, the part that had raised him, that had held him when he was scared, that had taught him to ride a bike and tie his shoes and be a man, that part wanted to respond, wanted to tell him it would be okay, wanted to fix it. But I didn't, because it wasn't okay, and I couldn't fix it. And maybe, just maybe, Marcus needed to sit in this, needed to feel the full weight of what he'd done, needed to understand that actions have consequences, and sometimes sorry isn't enough. I drove home through the snow, slow, careful. The roads were getting slick. When I got there, I didn't turn on the lights right away, just sat in the dark living room. The Christmas tree Maria and I had bought 20 years ago stood in the corner, undecorated. I hadn't had the heart to decorate it without her, without family. But sitting there in the dark, I realized something. The family I'd been trying to hold on to didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never had. Maybe I'd been clinging to a memory. A version of Marcus that had stopped being real the moment he'd decided his wife's parents' approval mattered more than his father's presence. That hurt. Still hurt. Probably always would. But there was something else too. Something I hadn't felt in 4 years. Freedom. I wasn't carrying them anymore. Wasn't responsible for their mortgage, their repairs, their lifestyle. Wasn't waiting for phone calls that wouldn't come. Wasn't hoping for invitations that would never arrive. I was just George. Just me. 76 years old. Veteran. Widower. Man who'd finally stood up for himself. I got up, turned on the lights, looked around my small, cold, outdated house. It was mine. Completely mine. No strings. No obligations. No one taking from me while giving nothing back. I walked to the kitchen, made coffee even though it was late, stood at the window watching the snow fall. Tomorrow was Christmas. I'd be alone. First time in 50 years. But alone felt different now. Didn't feel like abandonment, felt like choice. I'd chosen to stop being used, chosen to stop accepting scraps, chosen to demand the respect I'd earned through decades of service and sacrifice. And if that meant Christmas alone, so be it. I'd survived worse. My phone buzzed one more time. I almost ignored it. Then saw it was from Dana Roberts, the journalist. George. I heard what happened tonight. Word travels fast. I'm running the follow-up tomorrow instead of next week. Christmas Day. Front page. People need to know the whole story. Thank you for trusting me with it. I smiled. Small, tired, but real. Merry Christmas to me. The living room felt too quiet after that. Just me and my coffee and the sound of snow hitting the windows. I thought about that moment at the dinner table, when I'd looked at Marcus and told him I was disappointed. Not angry. Disappointed. Anger would have been easier for him. Anger he could have fought against, could have defended himself, could have blamed on my stubbornness or my pride or whatever story he'd been telling himself. But disappointment, that sits different. That's about expectations not met, about potential wasted, about becoming less than you were raised to be. I'd raised Marcus to be better than this. Raised him to stand up for people, not step on them. Raised him to value character over comfort, to choose right over easy. And he'd chosen easy, chosen the white in-laws with money and status, chosen the performance of success over the reality of integrity, chosen to pretend his father didn't exist while spending his father's money. That's what hurt most. Not that he'd excluded me. People grow apart. Families change. I understood that. But the lying, the pretending, the letting everyone believe he'd built this life himself while I paid the bills in the background like some kind of invisible bank. That took a special kind of cowardice. I remembered him as a kid, 7 years old. We'd been at the grocery store. The clerk had shortchanged us by $5. I'd noticed. Marcus had noticed too. Watched me go back to the counter. Watched me politely but firmly point out the error. Watched the clerk apologize and hand over the correct change. On the way to the car, Marcus had asked why I'd bothered. "It's only $5, Dad." I'd stopped, crouched down to his level. Because principle isn't about the amount I'd told him. It's about what's right. We don't let people take from us, and we don't take from people. We stand up for what's fair even when it's uncomfortable. He'd nodded, said he understood. Somewhere between 7 and 45, he'd forgotten. Or maybe he'd just decided that comfort mattered more than principle, that fitting in with Lauren's family mattered more than honoring his own. Either way, that wasn't the son I'd raised, and maybe that was the hardest truth of all. Christmas morning, I woke up the way I had for 30 years. No alarm, just habit. Body clock set by decades of reveille. 5:30 a.m., Still dark outside. House cold because I'd turned the heat down overnight. I made coffee. Strong, black. Stood at the kitchen window watching the snow that had fallen through the night. Must have been 6 inches. Maybe more. The world outside looked clean, fresh, like someone had erased all the old marks and started over. My phone sat on the counter. I'd turned the sound off before bed, but the screen showed notifications. 17 of them. I scrolled through. More texts from people who'd been at the dinner. More messages of support. One from Susan Baxter, my attorney, saying she'd seen the follow-up article Dana had published that morning. Front page like she'd promised. And one text from Marcus. Sent at 2:47 a.m. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about what you said. About disappointment. You're right. I chose wrong. I chose comfort over character. I chose fitting in over standing up. I don't know how to fix this. Don't know if I can. But I need you to know I see it now. I see what I became. And I hate it. I read it 3 times. Set the phone down. Picked up my coffee. The thing about apologies is they don't undo damage. They acknowledge it. And acknowledgement is a start. But it's only a start. Marcus seeing what he'd become didn't give me back 4 years. Didn't erase the exclusion, didn't return the $137,000, didn't undo the humiliation of being told I wasn't expected while my money was. But it was something. I looked at Maria's photo on the mantel, at Isaiah's picture next to it. Maria would have told me to be careful here, to not let anger make me cruel, to remember that Marcus was still my son, even if he'd forgotten I was his father. Isaiah deserved a grandfather, deserved to know where he came from, deserved better than to be caught in the middle of adult failures. I picked up my phone, typed a response. Seeing it is the first step. Changing it is the work. We'll see if you're willing to do the work. Hit send. Then I went back to my coffee and watched the sun come up over snow that covered everything broken. 3 days passed. Marcus texted twice more. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, out of discipline. The same stillness I'd learned years ago in the desert. The kind that comes after a clean shot when you wait for the target to drop. When you don't move, don't speak, don't give away your position. You just wait and watch and let the consequences unfold. Marcus needed to sit in what he'd done, needed to feel the weight of it without me rushing in to make it lighter. That's what I'd been doing for 4 years, making things lighter, easier, paying the bills so he didn't have to feel the pressure. Staying quiet about the exclusion so he didn't have to feel the guilt. Not anymore. On the 3rd morning, December 27th, I found an envelope wedged in my mailbox. Certified mail, the kind that requires a signature, but the postal worker had just left it because of the holiday. I opened it standing right there at the mailbox. Snow falling light around me, breath fogging in the cold air. Notice of default. Wells Fargo, mortgage division. Amount past due $11,250. I did the math quick. 3 months. 3 months they'd gone without making a payment. September, October, November. While I'd stopped paying in early December, they'd already been behind before that. The letter was formal, legal language. But the message was clear. Payment required within 14 days to avoid foreclosure proceedings. 14 days to come up with $11,000 or lose the house. I read it twice. Slow, making sure I understood every word, every implication. Then I folded it back up, put it in my coat pocket, walked back to the house. Inside, I made a second cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, pulled out the notice and read it one more time. They were going to lose the house. Not because of me, because of them, because they'd been living beyond their means long before I'd cut them off, because they'd been pretending to be something they weren't, because the foundation had been cracked all along and I'd just been the temporary support beam holding it up. Now that support was gone, and the whole structure was coming down. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, maybe. Vindication. The feeling of being proven right. But I didn't. I just felt tired. And clear. And like the air in my home was lighter somehow. Warmer. Like it finally belonged to me again instead of being a waiting room where I sat hoping to be called back into a family that didn't want me. I finished my coffee, threw the notice in the recycling bin. Not my problem anymore. That evening, 6:08, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Hadn't been expecting anyone for years, really. But I knew who it was before I even looked through the window. Marcus stood on my porch. Wind whipped around him. His face was red from cold, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. He looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. Looked like a man who'd been carrying something heavy and finally understood the weight of it. I opened the door. Didn't say anything, just stepped aside. He came in slowly, looking around like he was entering a church for the first time in years, taking it in, the small living room, the worn furniture, the photos on the mantel. "This place looks good," he said quietly. "It's what happens when you stop giving your paycheck to people who don't respect you." He flinched, but he took it, nodded. We sat at the kitchen table, same table where I'd calculated how much I'd given them, same table where I'd built my folders of evidence. He sat across from me, hands folded, not quite meeting my eyes. I saw the letter, he said finally. "The foreclosure notice. It's bad, Dad." I nodded, said nothing. "We've been behind for months, since summer. I kept thinking we'd catch up, kept thinking Lauren's commission checks would come through bigger, kept thinking something would break our way." He paused, swallowed hard, but nothing did. "And then you stopped paying, and I realized how much we'd been depending on you, how much of our life was actually your life, your money, your sacrifice." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, set it on the table between us. I added it all up, went through my old emails, bank records, receipts you'd forwarded me over the years, everything I could find. I unfolded it. His handwriting, numbers in columns, dates, amounts, all leading to a total at the bottom. $226,875. I looked at that number, then at him. "You missed a few," I said. His eyes got wet. "I figured, but it's enough to see it, enough to understand what I took from you, what I let Lauren and her parents take from you." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I chose them over you. I let them make me ashamed of where I came from, ashamed of you. And I'm standing here now wondering how I ever let it get this far." The silence between us was thick, heavy with years of things unsaid. "Lauren keeps saying we need you to bail us out again," he continued. "Says that's what family does, that you're obligated, that it's your duty as a father and a grandfather." He looked up at me then, really looked at me. And yesterday, for the first time, I told her no. I sat back slightly, listened. I told her the man who paid our bills for 5 years without complaint doesn't owe us a damn thing. That maybe we owe him everything. That maybe we need to figure this out ourselves for once. What did she say? She cried. Then she started packing. Said if I wasn't going to fix this, she was going back to Boston, to her parents, that she'd take Isaiah with her. "And what did you say to that?" I said I'd help her pack. I studied my son, this man I'd raised, this man who'd disappointed me so deeply, looking for signs that this was manipulation. Another angle, another way to get what he needed from me. But all I saw was exhaustion, and maybe finally clarity. "We're going to lose the house," he said. "I know that now. I've made peace with it." He folded his hands again. "I just came here to tell you I'm sorry. Not sorry because I want something. Sorry because I need you to know I see what I did. I see who I became. And I'm going to spend however long it takes becoming someone different, someone better, someone you could be proud of again." I looked at Maria's photo on the mantel, then at Isaiah's picture beside it. "We're not going back," I said finally. "But we might go forward." Marcus looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "If you want a relationship with me," I continued, "you'll build it brick by brick, not with money, with respect, with presence, with truth. And it starts with you figuring out your own life, your own bills, your own path." He nodded slowly. "I can do that." "We'll see," I said. But for the first time in 4 years, I believed maybe he could. Marcus sat there for a moment after I said that, processing. Then he looked down at his hands. Rough hands. Working man's hands. Hands that looked like mine used to before age spotted them, and arthritis bent the Ken knuckles. "I chose them over you," he said quietly. "Lauren's family, her parents, their approval, their world, and now they're gone. Patricia won't return my calls. Richard told me I embarrassed them beyond repair. Lauren's lawyer sent me separation papers yesterday. He looked up. And I'm standing here in your kitchen looking at what I destroyed, wondering how I ever let it get this far. I stayed quiet. Let him talk. Let him get it out. Lauren kept saying we needed you to bail us out one more time, that it was your duty as a father, as a grandfather. That family doesn't abandon family. She said it over and over until I almost believed it. He paused, rubbed his face. And then, yesterday, for the first time in our marriage, I said no. I leaned forward slightly, listening. I told her the man who paid our bills for 5 years without complaint didn't owe us a damn thing. That maybe we owed him everything. That maybe it was time we figured out how to stand on our own feet instead of standing on yours. What did she say to that? She cried. Said I was choosing you over her, over our family, over Isaiah's future. Then she packed 2 suitcases and left for her parents' place in Boston. Is Isaiah with her? He shook his head. No. He's with a friend's family until I figure things out. I didn't want him to see his mother that upset. Didn't want him to hear us fighting about money and houses and who was to blame. I stood up, walked to the mantel, picked up Maria's photo, looked at her face, that smile she had, the one that said she knew things before they happened, the one that had tried to warn me about all of this years ago. Then I picked up the photo of Isaiah, 3 years old in that picture, wearing my old army cap sideways, grinning like he'd just conquered the world. I carried both photos back to the table, set them down where Marcus could see them. We're not going back, I said. You understand that? We're not going back to how things were, to you taking and me giving and everyone pretending that was normal. Marcus nodded. I know, but we might go forward. He looked up at me, eyes red, hopeful in a way I hadn't seen in years. If you want a relationship with me, I continued, you'll build it brick by brick, not with money, with respect, with presence, with truth. You'll show up, you'll do the work. You'll prove through actions, not words, that you understand what you did wrong. I can do that, he said. And you'll let me have a relationship with Isaiah. Not filtered through Lauren or her parents. Direct, real, the way grandfathers and grandsons are supposed to have. Yes, absolutely yes. I sat back down, looked at my son. This man I'd raised. This man who'd failed me and was now maybe ready to try again. Then we'll see, I said. We'll take it slow. We'll see if you mean what you say, if you're willing to do the work of rebuilding what you broke. Marcus reached across the table, hand extended. I took it, shook it, firm, the way men do when they're making an agreement that matters. 2 days later, I walked into Susan Baxter's office. 9 a.m. appointment. She had coffee waiting. Black. The way she knew I took it. George. She stood to shake my hand, gestured to the chair across from her desk. I assume this is about your son. Partly. But mostly it's about protecting what's mine. She opened her laptop, pulled up my file. Go ahead. I need to update my will. Remove Marcus and Lauren as beneficiaries. All of them. Primary and contingent. She typed without looking up. Done. Who do you want as beneficiaries now? Set up a custodial account for Isaiah. Roth IRA. Everything goes to him when I die. Not accessible until he's 18. And only if certain conditions are met. What conditions? High school graduation minimum. College acceptance gets him access to half. The rest comes when he's 25, regardless of education, as long as he's employed or in school. She made notes. Smart. Keeps him from blowing it young. Who's the trustee until he's of age? I paused. Thought about it. Marcus. If he's proven himself by then. If not you. She looked up at that. You trust me to manage your grandson's inheritance. I trust you to do what's right. That's more than I can say for most people. She smiled slightly. Kept typing. What else? I need a letter. Legal documentation that all financial support I provided to Marcus and Lauren over the past 4 years was voluntary. Gifts, not loans, not contractual obligations, nothing that implies I was required to continue. Protection in case they try to sue. Exactly. She pulled up a template. Started drafting. This is straightforward. I'll have it ready by end of day. Anything else? Yeah. Add a no contest clause to the will. Anyone who challenges it forfeits everything. She stopped typing. Looked at me. That's harsh. That's necessary. I'm done playing games with people who think they're entitled to what I've earned. She nodded, went back to typing. After a moment, she turned her laptop toward me. You should see this. On the screen was a bank account, new, opened 3 days ago. Custodial account in Isaiah's name. Trustee listed as Marcus Washington. Starting balance $1,500. I stared at it. Where did this come from? Your son opened it. I got copied on the paperwork because you'd listed me as alternate trustee in your previous documents. It's not much, but it's legitimate. His money, his choice. I sat back. Felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something. A signal, I said quietly. Susan closed the laptop, looked at me over her reading glasses. Yes, a signal that maybe he's starting to understand. We'll see. She printed out the documents, had me sign, notarized them right there. When I left her office, the sun was out. Bright, cold, the kind of day that makes everything look sharp and clear. Thursday afternoon, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written across the front in block letters. The kind of careful printing kids do when they're trying their hardest to make it neat. I opened it standing right there at the mailbox. Inside was a piece of notebook paper, torn carefully along the spiral edge. The kind with the blue lines. At the top, drawn in blue crayon, was a picture. Simple, the way 8-year-olds draw. A man in a green jacket standing next to a truck. Beside him, a boy with his arms spread wide. Stick figures, but clear, recognizable. Above the drawing, 3 words written in crayon, letters slanting up at the end like they were trying to climb off the page. Me and Grandpa. Below the drawing, a message, written in pencil this time. Isaiah's handwriting. I recognized it from birthday cards he'd made me before things got bad. Dear Grandpa George, I miss you. Thank you for my boots. I wore them to school yesterday. Tyler said they looked cool. Mrs. Henderson said I looked strong, like a soldier. I told her my grandpa was a real soldier. She said that's really special. Dad says you're mad at us. I don't understand why, but I'm not mad at you. I love you. Merry Christmas. Isaiah. At the bottom, he'd drawn a heart, colored it in red. Careful not to go outside the lines, I stood there at the mailbox, holding that letter. The wind was cold. Snow was starting to fall again, but I didn't move. Just read it again and again. This wasn't manipulation. Wasn't Marcus or Lauren coaching him to write something to make me feel guilty. This was just a boy who missed his grandfather, who'd worn the boots I'd given him and been proud, who'd told his teacher about me, a boy who still remembered. I walked back to the house, sat at the kitchen table, set the letter down carefully like it might tear if I wasn't gentle. I'd received a lot of things in my life, commendations, medals, certificates of appreciation, letters from commanding officers praising my service. Maria's love letters from when I was deployed. I'd treasured all of them, but I sat with Isaiah's letter longer than any of them. Read it over and over, studied the drawing, the careful way he'd spelled soldier, the heart at the bottom. This wasn't a plea, wasn't a guilt trip, wasn't even really asking for anything. It was just a message from a boy who still remembered where strength came from, who still saw value in his grandfather when the adults around him had decided that value had conditions. Kids see things clearly, before the world teaches them to calculate worth based on social standing or money or convenience, before they learn to exclude people who don't fit the image they're trying to project. Isaiah just saw his grandpa, the man who'd given him boots that made him feel strong, the soldier his teacher said was special. And he missed me. I got up, found a piece of my own paper, sat back down at the table, started writing a letter back. Not to Marcus, not to Lauren, not to any of the adults who'd complicated everything. Just to Isaiah, because he deserved an answer. Deserved to know his grandpa wasn't mad at him, wasn't going anywhere. Deserved to know that some things, some people are worth holding on to, even when everything else falls apart. Dear Isaiah, thank you for your letter. I got it on a snowy Thursday afternoon and it made the whole house feel warmer. Warmer than any heater could. I'm not mad at you, not even a little bit. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that are hard to explain. But none of that has anything to do with you and me. I still have the photo of us on the mantle, the one where you wore my army hat sideways and said you were going to be a general. You looked the part then. I bet you still do. I'm glad you wore your boots to school. I'm glad Tyler thought they were cool and Mrs. Henderson said you looked strong. She's right. You come from a line of strong people. Your great-grandma Maria was strong, your dad is learning to be strong in new ways, and you, Isaiah, you're already stronger than you know. Take care of those boots. Clean them after it rains. Polish them when they get scuffed, and walk tall in them. Not because they're expensive or special, but because they remind you that you come from people who stand up, who serve, who don't quit when things get hard. I miss you too, soldier, more than you know. Keep writing to me if you want. Keep drawing pictures. Keep telling your teacher about your grandpa. And remember that no matter what happens with houses or money or any of the complicated grown-up stuff, you've got a grandfather who loves you. Always. Merry Christmas, Isaiah. Grandpa George. I folded the letter carefully, put it in an envelope, wrote his name on the front in clear letters, sent it to Marcus's address with a note attached asking him to make sure Isaiah got it directly. Didn't mention the foreclosure, didn't mention Lauren leaving, didn't mention any of the mess the adults had made. Isaiah didn't need to carry that weight, didn't need to know about the battles being fought around him. He just needed to know that his roots hadn't rotted, that somewhere in this world he had a grandfather who saw him, who valued him, who would always be there when he needed someone who remembered where strength really comes from. That was enough. For now, that was enough. 3 days later, another envelope arrived. This one thicker. I could feel something solid inside. I opened it carefully. A photograph slid out. Isaiah standing next to a snowman. Must have been 6 feet tall, that snowman. 3 big balls of snow stacked up. Stick arms, carrot nose, the kind kids build when they have time and enthusiasm, and someone patient enough to help them. Isaiah stood beside it in his tactical boots, laced up high, pants tucked in military style. He was saluting, hand up to his forehead. Form wasn't perfect, elbow out too far, fingers not quite together, but the pride on his face, the seriousness, the way he stood tall, that was perfect. But what made me stop breathing was what I saw behind him. Taped to the side of the house, a piece of poster board, hand-painted in blue and red letters, big enough to read clearly in the photo. Grandpa built this house. I sat down hard at the kitchen table, stared at that photograph, at my grandson standing proud in boots I'd given him, in front of a house I'd paid for, with a sign declaring a truth everyone else had tried to hide. My throat got tight, eyes burned, didn't cry, just sat there holding that photo like it was something sacred. That evening I sat on my porch. Cold night, stars out. The kind of cold that usually bit through your coat and made your bones ache, but it didn't bite like it used to. Something had shifted, something in me or in the world or in the way they connected. I couldn't name it, but I felt it. I made a decision sitting there. Every Christmas from now on, Isaiah would get something from me, not mailed to Marcus's house, not passed through intermediaries, direct, hand-delivered if possible, a gift that came with history attached, with stories, with truth. He deserved to know where he came from, not the sanitized version Lauren's family preferred, not the convenient story about self-made success, the real one, the one about a black man who served his country for 32 years, who married a woman who saw him for who he was, who raised a son and helped that son build a life, who paid and sacrificed and showed up even when it wasn't acknowledged. Isaiah deserved to know about backbone, about standing up when you've been pushed down, about dignity that doesn't depend on someone else's approval, not just in blood, in backbone, because blood alone doesn't teach you anything. Blood is just biology. But backbone, that's learned. That's passed down through stories and examples in moments like this. When a boy puts on boots his grandfather gave him and makes a sign that tells the truth everyone else wanted hidden, that's backbone. And Isaiah had it. I'd make sure he never forgot where it came from. That weekend I went out to the garage, back corner under the tarp behind the old lawnmower that hadn't run in 3 years. My ammo box from Germany, standard military issue, metal, olive green paint chipped at the corners. Held 50 caliber rounds back in the day, empty now, had been empty for 20 years. I carried it inside, set it on the kitchen table, wiped off the dust with a rag. Solid, heavy, even empty. The kind of thing that lasts, that survives. I started filling it. First item, my field compass. Brass. Still worked, still pointed north no matter which way you turned it. I'd carried it through Desert Storm, through Bosnia, through training exercises in places so remote they didn't have names on maps. It had never failed me. I set it in the box carefully, wrapped it in cloth so it wouldn't scratch. Second item, a letter. Yellowed paper in a plastic sleeve. Maria's handwriting. She'd written it to Marcus the night before his first day of kindergarten. I'd found it years later in her jewelry box after she passed. Had read it once and put it away because it hurt too much. But Isaiah deserved to read it someday. Deserved to know what kind of woman his great-grandmother was. How she'd written about being scared to let her baby go to school. About hoping he'd be kind. About praying he'd remember where he came from even as he learned new things. Third item, a photograph. Me in dress uniform, 1987, desert camouflage, standing at attention, young, strong, before the gray hair and the arthritis and the weight of disappointment. This was who I'd been, who I still was under all the years, a man who served, who stood for something, who didn't back down. Fourth item, Isaiah's drawing, the one from his first letter. Me and Grandpa. Blue crayon. Stick figures with our arms spread wide. I placed it on top of everything else, protected in a plastic sheet. Then I closed the lid, latched it, sat back and looked at it. This wasn't a gift, not really. Gifts are things you give for birthdays or Christmas, things that get used up or worn out or forgotten. This was a time capsule of truth. I'd give it to Isaiah when he was old enough to understand it. Maybe when he graduated high school, maybe when he turned 18, whenever the moment felt right. And when I did, I'd sit with him, tell him the stories behind each item, the compass that never lied, the letter from a grandmother who loved before she ever met him, the photo of a young soldier who believed in service, the drawing of a boy who saw his grandfather clearly when everyone else's vision had blurred. Because when boys like Isaiah grow up, they deserve more than stories filtered through bitterness. They deserve more than sanitized versions that make everyone comfortable. They deserve more than half-truths designed to protect feelings or preserve images. They deserve the full map. The good parts, the hard parts, the parts where people fail and learn and fail again, and maybe, if they're lucky and willing, eventually grow. Isaiah deserved to know that his great-grandmother was wise, that his grandfather served with honor, that his father made mistakes but was trying to fix them, that family is complicated and messy and sometimes breaks but can be rebuilt if people are willing to do the work. He deserved to know that love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's standing up. Sometimes it's saying no. Sometimes it's walking away so people learn to stand on their own. He deserved to know that being black in this country means navigating spaces where people see your color before they see your character. But that doesn't mean you make yourself smaller. It means you stand taller, walk with more purpose, demand the respect you've earned. He deserved the full map. And this box, this time capsule, this collection of truth would give it to him when the time was right. 2 weeks into January, just after dusk, a car pulled into my driveway. I was in the kitchen making dinner. Nothing fancy. Chicken breast, rice, green beans from a can, the kind of meal you make when you're cooking for one and don't see the point in pretending it's more than fuel. I heard the engine cut, looked out the window. Lauren's car, that white SUV she'd insisted they needed, the one with the heated seats and the premium sound system, probably cost more than my truck was worth. She sat in the driver's seat for a minute, not moving, just sitting there like she was building courage. I turned off the stove, waited. She got out finally. Walked up the path to my door. No rush, no confidence, just slow steps like each one required a decision. This wasn't the Lauren I'd known for 7 years. That Lauren wore makeup like armor, designer clothes like a uniform, perfume that announced her presence before she entered a room. That Lauren walked into spaces like she owned them. This woman looked stripped down, raw, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup that I could see. Jeans and a plain coat. No jewelry except her wedding ring. Just Lauren. Empty-handed, empty-eyed. I opened the door before she could knock. She startled slightly, like she'd expected to have to work up the courage to ring the bell, and I'd taken that moment away from her. "George," she said. Her voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. I didn't say anything, just stood there, waiting. "Can I come in?" I studied her for a moment, looking for angles, for manipulation, for whatever play this was. But all I saw was exhaustion, the kind that goes deeper than lack of sleep. The kind that comes from carrying something heavy for too long and finally setting it down. I stepped aside. She walked past me, slowly, looking around like she'd never seen this place before. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe all those years she'd been looking at my house, she'd only been seeing what it lacked. The outdated appliances, the worn furniture, the modest size. Maybe now she was actually seeing it. We stood in the living room, awkward. She didn't sit, didn't take off her coat, just stood there with her hands in her pockets. I broke the silence. "Why are you here, Lauren?" She looked down, took a breath, let it out slow. "I wanted to look you in the eye." "Why?" "To say I'm sorry." I waited. Didn't make it easy for her. She continued. "I was wrong about you, about a lot of things. I let pride and appearances get in the way of decency. I thought control was the same thing as respect. I confused silence for agreement. That landed. Those were real words, not rehearsed, not coached. Just honest." I gave her a slight nod. "Keep going." She looked up at me then, eyes red but dry, like she'd already cried all she could and this was what was left. "I let my parents dictate how we treated you. I let their prejudices become my actions. I told myself we were just maintaining standards, but the truth is I was ashamed to have you around them, ashamed of what they'd think, what their friends would think." She paused, swallowed hard, "and that shame, that choice to protect their comfort over your dignity, that's on me. Not Marcus, not my parents, me." We sat down at the kitchen table, across from each other. The same table where I'd calculated what they'd cost me, where I'd built my case, where Marcus had sat 2 weeks ago admitting his failures. Lauren looked at her hands, turned them over, studied them like they belonged to someone else. I waited. "Do you hate me?" she asked finally, looking up. I thought about that, really thought about it. Gave her the honesty she'd come for. "No," I said, "but I don't trust you, and I don't welcome you." Her jaw tightened. She nodded slowly. "I deserve that." "You deserve truth," I said. "And the truth is, you don't get to show up after the damage is done and ask for redemption without doing the work to rebuild trust. Brick by brick, action by action, over time." "I know." "Do you? Because showing up here with an apology is step one. Maybe step half. The real question is what comes after. Whether you're willing to examine why you felt ashamed, why you chose your parents' approval over basic human decency, why you let their prejudices become your actions." She flinched at that word. "Prejudices. You think I'm racist," she said quietly. "I think you participated in racism," I corrected. "Whether you believe black people are inferior or whether you just acted like it to please your parents, the result for me was the same. Exclusion, erasure, being treated as less than." She looked down again. "I never thought about it that way. That's part of the problem. You didn't have to think about it. You got to enjoy the benefits of my money while keeping me at arm's length from the people whose opinions mattered to you. You got to post about your blessed life while hiding the black man who made it possible." The words hung there. Sharp. True. "My parents," she started, then stopped, shook her head. "No, that's not fair. My parents raised me with certain views, yes, but I'm 38 years old. I chose to let those views dictate my actions. I chose comfort over confronting them. I chose their approval over your dignity." She looked up at me. "And I'm not here asking you to forgive me. I'm here acknowledging what I did, owning it, and telling you that I'm trying to be different. Not for you, not to get anything from you, but because I have a son who's watching, and I don't want him to grow up thinking it's okay to treat people the way I treated you." That stopped me. "Isaiah," I said. She nodded. "He asks about you every day. He made that sign, put it on the house. My mother was horrified when she saw it, told him to take it down. He refused, said it was the truth and the truth doesn't need to hide. Despite everything, I felt something shift. Pride. Not in Lauren, in Isaiah. He gets that from you," she said. "That backbone, that refusal to be diminished. Marcus is trying to teach him that now too. Trying to undo some of the damage we did by example." I sat back, studied her. This woman who'd hurt me, who'd excluded me, who'd taken and taken while giving nothing back. She looked different now, smaller somehow, but also more real. "I don't know what happens next, George," she said. "Marcus and I are separated. We're probably getting divorced. I'm moving back to Boston. But before I left, I needed to say this, to your face. Not through Marcus, not through a letter. Face to face." I nodded slowly. Okay. You said what you came to say. I heard it. What you do with it now is up to you." She shifted in her seat, looked down at the table like there was something there she was trying to decide whether to show. "I was hoping maybe we could talk about Isaiah," she said. There it was, the real reason for the visit. I kept my face neutral. Waited. "I know you've been writing to him. He showed me your letter. And that account Marcus opened. Isaiah talks about it constantly. How he's going to save money like Grandpa taught him." She looked up. "I'm glad he has you in his life. I really am. But I was thinking maybe you and I could coordinate, keep things consistent for him, so he's not getting mixed messages." I leaned back slightly. "You mean you want to control how I grandparent?" Her face flushed. "That's not what I said, but it's what you meant. You want to make sure I don't tell him things that contradict the story you're trying to tell, that I don't explain why his parents are separating, why they lost the house, why Christmas was complicated this year. You don't have to be cruel," she said. "I'm not being cruel," I replied evenly. "Cruel would have been silence. Cruel would have been shutting you out the way you shut me out. This is just clarity." She sat with that, jaw tight. But she didn't argue. I continued. "Isaiah's welcome here any time. You want to coordinate schedules so he can visit, fine. But I'm not filtering my relationship with him through you. I'm not letting you dictate what I can say or teach or share with my grandson. He's still my son, and he's my grandson. And unlike you, I've never pretended he didn't exist when it was convenient." That landed hard. I could see it in her face. She stood up. "I'm moving back to Boston. Taking some time. Resetting." I didn't ask who the reset was for. Didn't ask if she'd learned anything or if this was just another performance. "Isaiah will stay with Marcus," she added. "I'll see him on holidays and summers. But I think some distance is healthy right now. For all of us." I nodded. "Probably right." She walked to the door, hand on the knob, stopped, turned back. "One day, George, you'll see I was trying my best." I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd hurt me, who'd excluded me, who'd taken my money while hiding my existence, who was now standing in my kitchen asking for understanding. "I hope that comforts you," I said, not mean, not angry, just honest. She nodded once. Something in her face shifted. Acceptance, maybe, or resignation. Then she left. No dramatic exit, no slammed door, no lingering perfume cloud, just absence, the honest kind. I stood there for a moment after she was gone. Then I walked back to the kitchen, turned the stove back on, finished making dinner. One plate, one chair, one life that was finally completely mine. 1 year later. December 25th. I woke in the dark. 5:30 a.m., no alarm. Just my body knowing what time it was. What day it was. The first Christmas morning in 29 years I'd spent alone. The house was cold. I'd turned the heat down overnight like always, saving money. Old habits die hard even when you don't need to save anymore. I lay there for a minute, listening to the silence. Thick, heavy, the kind of quiet that fills a house when there's no one else breathing in it. No footsteps from a grandchild running downstairs to see what Santa brought. No radio in the kitchen playing Christmas songs while someone made coffee. No Maria humming carols while she checked on the cinnamon rolls in the oven. Just frost on the windows. Just my breath fogging in the cold air. Just a house that was finally completely mine. I got up, dressed in the dark, flannel shirt, jeans, heavy socks, walked to the kitchen, made coffee the old way. In the percolator Maria had used for 30 years, the one that bubbled and hissed and took 10 minutes but made coffee that actually tasted like coffee. While it brewed, I stepped out onto the porch. Snow had fallen overnight, 3, maybe 4 inches, covered the driveway, covered the yard, covered the world in white like someone had laid a clean sheet over everything that had happened this year. No tire tracks, no footprints, just untouched snow under a sky starting to lighten at the edges. I thought about Maria, how she used to set a candle in the front window every Christmas morning. starting when Marcus was little, continuing even after he moved out. So if anyone's lost, she'd whisper, they know there's still a home lit for them. I hadn't done that in 3 years, since she passed. Seemed pointless to light a candle for people who weren't coming. But standing there on the porch watching the snow, I realized something. The candle wasn't for them. It was for me. A reminder that even when you're alone, you can still be a light, still be a home, still be the kind of person someone might find their way back to. I went inside, found Maria's old candle, white, thick, half burned from the last time she'd used it. I lit it, set it in the window, watched the flame catch and hold. Then I poured my coffee, stood at that window, watched the sun start to come up over snow that covered everything broken and made it look whole again. Just me, just coffee, just a candle burning in a window. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. 8:12 in the morning, I heard a car in the driveway. I looked out the window. A sedan, rental plates. It slid slightly on the snow as it stopped. Someone who wasn't used to winter driving. The door opened. Isaiah stepped out. Alone. He wore a coat 2 sizes too big, probably one of Marcus's old ones. Knit hat pulled down over his ears, those tactical boots I'd given him laced up high. In his hands held with both palms like it was fragile, like it was sacred, he carried something wrapped in newspaper. I set down my coffee, walked to the door, opened it, stepped out onto the porch. He looked up, saw me, didn't run, didn't shout, just walked toward me, steady and sure. We stood there for a moment. 2 generations, 28 years and a whole world between us, both of us knowing what it felt like to stand outside a door that should have been open. Dad dropped me off at a diner near the turnpike, Isaiah said. His voice was steady. Older than 9 years old should sound. Said they were headed to church. I told him I'd be fine. I nodded. You hungry always? Come on then. We went inside. I made him sit at the table while I cooked. Eggs scrambled with cheese, bacon, toast, the kind of breakfast that means something, that says you're welcome here. You matter here. He didn't talk much while he ate, just worked through the food methodical, like he'd learned not to waste, not to take things for granted. When he was done, he pushed the plate away, pulled the newspaper-wrapped package toward him. Grandma's stuff, he said. From the attic. I found it last week when Dad was packing boxes. He unwrapped it careful. Inside was a wooden box, handmade. Probably something Maria had bought at a craft fair years ago. Isaiah opened the lid. Inside, I saw pieces of my life I'd forgotten existed. Dog tags from my first deployment, a photo of me and Maria on our wedding day, a letter in Maria's handwriting, and something else, a folded piece of paper, yellowed, old. I picked it up, unfolded it. Maria's handwriting, but not a letter, a list, titled, For the Day He Remembers Who He Is. Below that, in her careful script, remind Marcus he comes from strength. Remind him his father never quit. Remind him that love doesn't always look like comfort. Sometimes it looks like boundaries. Sometimes it looks like letting people fall so they learn to stand. Remind him that being a man means owning your failures, not hiding from them, not blaming others for them, but standing in them and doing better. I read it twice. Felt something crack open in my chest. She knew, Isaiah said quietly. Grandma knew something like this would happen. I looked at him, this boy who'd found his way to me on Christmas morning, who'd held on to pieces of truth when the adults around him were trying to rewrite it. How did you know to come here? He shrugged. Dad's been different this year, quieter. Works all the time, comes home tired. But he talks about you now. Says he's trying to be someone you could be proud of again. Isaiah looked down at the box. And Mom called last night. From Boston. Said she missed me, but she needed time to figure things out. Said maybe next Christmas would be better. His voice didn't break, didn't waver, just stated facts. So I told Dad I wanted to come see you. He said okay, drove me to the diner, said to call when I was ready and he'd pick me up. I sat down across from him. This boy who was learning earlier than he should have to that adults don't always get it right. That sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you leave you at diners. That sometimes you have to find your own way home. You can stay as long as you want, I said. Today, tomorrow, however long. He nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. I brought my homework, and my toothbrush, and the book you sent me about the Tuskegee Airmen. Smart thinking. He smiled then. small, but real. Grandpa, yeah, I'm glad you didn't give up on us, even when we gave up on you. I reached across the table, put my hand over his. Some things are worth fighting for, I said, even when the fight looks like walking away. That afternoon, we walked the trail behind my house. Snow crunched under our boots. Sky was clear, cold but bright, the kind of day that makes everything look sharp. Isaiah walked beside me, not behind, not ahead, beside, like equals. You really built their house, he asked after a while. I helped, paid for most of it. Your dad and I were supposed to build something together. Turned out I was just the foundation and they wanted a different architect. He thought about that, kicked at the snow. Dad talks about it now, says he wishes he'd done things different. Does he? Yeah, he cries sometimes. At night, when he thinks I'm asleep. I hear him through the wall. I stopped walking, looked at this boy, 9 years old and already learning that adults aren't as strong as they pretend to be. Your dad's doing hard work right now, I said. Growing up work. The kind most people should do earlier, but sometimes it takes pain to make you pay attention. Isaiah nodded, like he understood. Maybe he did. Are you mad at him still? I thought about that, gave him the truth. I'm disappointed. But I'm watching, seeing if he means what he says, if he's willing to do more than apologize, if he's willing to be different. We walked further, the silence comfortable now. Grandpa, yeah, I'm glad you didn't let them forget you, even when they wanted to. I put my hand on his shoulder, squeezed. Some things are worth remembering, I said. Some people are worth fighting for, even when the fight looks like standing still and letting them fall. He looked up at me, understanding in his eyes. Too much understanding for 9 years old, but that's what love is sometimes, letting people face what they've done so they can choose who they want to be next. When we got back to the house, Isaiah helped me start a fire in the wood stove. Didn't need to be told how. Just grabbed kindling, arranged it right, stepped back when I lit the match. We sat on the couch, the one Maria and I had bought in 1996, worn but comfortable, the kind of furniture that holds memories in its cushions. Isaiah pulled out the wooden box again, looked at it like it held answers to questions he hadn't learned to ask yet. Grandma used to tell me stories about you, he said, about the medals, the missions, but also the Christmases, the pancakes. The way you'd carry me on your shoulders like I was made of feathers. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. Not right then. I think I remember, Isaiah continued. I was 4. It was snowing. You carried me to the truck when I fell asleep on the couch. You were heavy, I said finally, but I never minded. He looked up at me. I don't want to forget, Grandpa, so can I stay here a while just till school starts again? I nodded. Not fast, just enough. Of course. This is your home, too. He smiled. Crooked. A little worried, but real. I know it's not like their place. Isaiah looked around my small living room. The peeling wallpaper, the old furniture, the photos on the mantel. It's better, he said. It's real. That evening, after Isaiah had dozed off on the couch, I sat in my chair watching the fire, watching my grandson sleep, his chest rising and falling steady, peaceful, safe. I thought about the folders, the ones I'd built over a year ago, the evidence, the proof, the paper trail of everything they'd taken from me. I got up quiet, walked to the kitchen, pulled them out from the bottom drawer where I'd kept them. 3 folders. Financial evidence, social media screenshots, voice recordings transcribed and printed. I carried them back to the living room, sat down, opened the first one, all those numbers, all those receipts, all that proof of what I'd given and what I'd gotten back or hadn't gotten back. I'd needed this once, needed it to show the world what had been done to me, needed it to prove I wasn't crazy or confused or the problem. But sitting there now watching Isaiah sleep, I realized something. I didn't need it anymore, not because I'd forgiven everything, not because the hurt had disappeared, but because carrying proof of your wounds doesn't heal them. It just keeps them fresh, keeps them open. I stood up, walked to the wood stove, opened the door. The fire was burning good, hot, clean. I fed the first folder in. Page by page, watched the bank statements curl and blacken, watched the numbers disappear into ash. Then the second folder, the screenshots, Lauren's posts about her blessed life, about earning everything together, about family traditions, all of it turning to smoke. Then the third, the voice recordings, my own words documenting how I'd been erased, how I'd been excluded, how I'd been made to feel less than, gone, not because I was forgetting, not because I was pretending it hadn't happened, but because I didn't need to carry it anymore, didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Isaiah stirred on the couch, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. I closed the wood stove door, sat back down. The proof was gone. But the truth remained, in how Marcus was changing, in how Isaiah had found his way back to me, in how I'd learned to stand up for myself even when it cost everything. That was enough. I walked over to where Isaiah slept, pulled the old Afghan off the back of the couch, the one Maria had crocheted 30 years ago, green and cream, soft from decades of use. I draped it over him, tucked it around his shoulders gentle so I wouldn't wake him. He shifted, made a small sound, settled deeper into sleep. I stood there for a moment, watching him. This boy who'd found his way back, who'd remembered when the adults around him had forgotten, who'd chosen truth over comfort even when it would have been easier to go along with the lies. "Welcome home, soldier," I whispered. The candle still burned in the window, Maria's candle, the one I'd lit that morning thinking I'd spend Christmas alone. But I hadn't been alone. Not really. The candle had done its job, had been a light for someone who needed to find their way home. Not Marcus, not Lauren, not the people I'd expected. Isaiah, the next generation, the one who deserved better than the mess we'd made. The one who deserved the truth even when the truth was hard. The one who deserved a grandfather who stood up instead of one who kept bending until he broke. I looked at Maria's photo on the mantel, at the ammo box sitting beside it, the time capsule I'd prepared, the truth I'd saved for when Isaiah was old enough to carry it. "You were right," I whispered to her picture. About all of it. About standing up. About letting people fall so they learn to stand. About love not always looking like comfort. The fire crackled. Isaiah breathed steady. The candle burned. And for the first time since Maria died, my house felt like home again. As I sit here watching Isaiah sleep by the fire, I realize something I should have known years ago. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. And it's not given once, it's renewed every single day through actions, not words. For 3 decades, I served this country in uniform. But the hardest battle I ever fought wasn't overseas. It was right here in my son's living room when I finally learned to say no to people who confused my generosity with weakness. They saw my silence as compliance, my financial support as obligation, my brown skin as something to be hidden from their refined social circles. But here's what I learned. You can't buy your way into someone's respect, and you can't sacrifice your dignity for the comfort of people who don't value you. Marcus chose a life that looked good over a father who had always been good to him. Lauren chose appearances over authenticity, and for years I enabled that choice by continuing to pay for a seat at a table where I was never truly welcome. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't canceling those mortgage payments. It was accepting that my son had to lose everything before he could see what mattered. For too long, I thought being a good father meant always being there, always helping, always saying yes. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back. Let people face the consequences of their choices. Let them fall so they can learn to stand. As a black man in America, I've spent my life navigating spaces where people saw my color before they saw my character, where I had to work twice as hard to earn half the credit, where my success was questioned but my failures were expected. I survived that by being excellent, by serving with honor, by never giving anyone a reason to doubt my worth. But excellence shouldn't be the price of basic respect, and I shouldn't have had to keep proving my value to my own family. What Isaiah taught me is that children see clearly what adults have learned to ignore. He saw his grandfather, not a checkbook, not an inconvenience, not someone to be hidden from refined company, just a man who loved him, who showed up, who kept his promises. And when the adults around him tried to erase that truth, Isaiah refused to let it be erased. That's the legacy I want to leave him. Not money, not a house, not things that can be spent or sold or lost, but backbone. The ability to stand up when you've been pushed down, to speak truth when everyone else is comfortable with lies, to demand the respect you've earned instead of begging for scraps. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet walk back to your own home, lighting a candle in the window, and waiting for the right soul to find their way back. Not everyone will return, but the ones who do will know the difference between a house you bought and a home you built. And that makes all the difference.